Hey.
There we go. Nice.
Good evening. Welcome to AusTableTalk. My name is Luke. I'm at the table with Emerson. With Emerson and Shannon and the lovely Zoe over there producing for us. Thank you, Zoe. All right. Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
Good evening.
We're recording much later than we planned to.
Yeah.
We should tell the people that, right?
We got caught up on a
big question.
big confusing question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk about a lot of things, but I think this is the most important thing. We need to start here.
Yeah. If we have any flat earthers listening, we're going to offend them.
Yeah, we are, and we're very sorry. We do care about you as people.
Yeah, you're great people.
Yeah.
But so here's how it went.
Context.
So, I've always found the arguments for flat Earth to be ridiculous and easily explained away. Like, oh, you don't understand this and that. Like, they're always they're easy to explain. Their problems with the globe Earth, right? But this week, I was watching a video, and it basically was like, okay, if this is the sun, and
if
this
you're
is
not
the
watching
Earth.
The video version, it's probably worth it at this point.
So the sun's in the middle, and the Earth is on this side of the sun, and we're spinning, but also we're going around the sun, right? So this is what the guy said in the video, and it blew my mind, but we did get an answer for it. He said, if you're here and the Earth spins, you're facing away from the sun, therefore it's nighttime, and you look up into the sky and you see the stars, right?
Shannon providing stars over there. The twinkling, I can see.
The twinkling stars, right? And then he says, but if you continue to spin and you continue to go around the sun, 6 months later you're on the opposite side of the sun, and you spin around so that you're facing away from the sun, therefore it's nighttime, you look up into the sky, he says, you should see completely different stars, but you don't. You see the same stars year round. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't have an answer for this. And it's been bugging me all week because I'm like, am I going to turn into a flat earther because of this? Because that doesn't make any sense. Why do we see the same stars all year round? And so we just had, me and Shannon started off just like talking about it, going, this doesn't make any sense. Like, maybe everything's orbiting around the Earth, but it's still a globe. This is what we were saying. Yeah. And then eventually, Luke, you finished setting up, and you came and joined the conversation. And you can figure, well, actually, you thought you had an answer, and you explained it.
And then it didn't work.
But it didn't work.
Yep.
And we were like, and then your mind was blown, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, we need to get an astrophysicist."
I was about to say, let's get Neil deGrasse Tyson in here. Like, let's get someone else to answer this, apart from us.
Yeah. Oh man.
But the one that really cracked it though was Shannon.
Yes. So explain the reason.
Yes. Here is the epiphany. It's coming down the line for you.
Since the Earth is a globe, we're here on the southern hemisphere in Australia.
Yeah. Well, we're more like here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
About your second knuckle.
Yeah, right there.
Second knuckle. And we have a view of down here. So even though when we're on this side, we still see stars below Earth technically. And northern hemisphere sees stars above. And then we was like, oh,
because in the northern hemisphere, their view as they're rotating around the sun is actually just doing this.
Yeah.
It's
as it goes
pointing
around.
predominantly upwards.
Yeah, upwards,
right?
and just stars are going like this.
Yeah.
So there's subtle movements of the stars, but
yeah,
still
that's
see
right.
the same stars.
And so we're like, that makes a lot of sense. So then I asked the question. I said, okay, well, what if you're on the equator? Do the stars change year round? And so we asked ChatGPT, and turns out they do.
They're always seeing different stuff.
You're seeing different stars all year round if you're on the equator.
Yeah.
So turns out the Earth is still a globe.
Yeah.
So anyone out there who is like in Ecuador or the Philippines or whatever who lives on the equator, like we envy your stargazing abilities at this point.
For sure. Yeah. So that's what ChatGPT said. It was like the equator is great for stargazing because you get different stars all year round. But maybe the ones on the horizon might stay the same, but they're on a different area all year round. Yeah. But for us, we have the same stars all year round. They just sort of change position because we're not on the equator. So it's good.
The guy was factually incorrect.
He was factually incorrect.
Yep.
Yeah. He was actually factually incorrect. But I was going to say, we all were about this close to becoming flat earthers.
My brain was just unraveling. And then as soon as it pieced together that wait, we're on the southern hemisphere. We're going to be looking downways. My
Or
brain just-
upwards.
Or upwards.
Depends. We might be on the top of the world.
We could.
We don't know which way space is facing.
It's all the Europeans' fault.
That's right.
They're the ones that said they're on the top.
That's right.
That's what the government's hiding. Australia is actually on top of the world.
That's right.
Well, there's
We're
literally
not
people
down
out there
under.
that claim that Australians are all paid actors and Australia doesn't exist.
We're not down under. We're up top.
Yeah. I literally had a brain meltdown just then. I have no idea what I was going to say, so let's just move on.
All right, it's all this astrophysicist talk.
Yeah, I don't know what
Too
I was
much.
about to say.
My brain instantly went from almost having like
Oh.
this massive headache,
Yep.
and then figured it out, and my brain is just like, oh, I can actually think clearly. I'm not having a quarter of a year life crisis.
Quarter life crisis.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I don't. I mean, I'm all for the drama and the hyperbole, but I don't think I was very close to being a flat earther.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all the other stuff. as you
No,
said.
actually, that's true. I was not actually anywhere close to being a flat earther, but I was there
You couldn't
for,
answer the question.
for a little bit. I was like, maybe everything does rotate around us,
Yeah, where it's,
Yeah.
but it's not true.
Yeah, you almost rejected heliocentrism, is what you're trying to tell me, right? Yeah. Okay. So I think we all feel better.
Yep.
yes,
We've all got that
so much better.
out now. Okay, very good. Okay. So, for reels and feels, we've got a couple of things to share. I've got a couple. Shannon has one. So maybe let's flick over to that, Zoe. And this is
I
one.
like this.
Yeah, this one I just read it and I had a good chuckle to myself. So this is comparing Bible versions, and I thought it was, okay. This is funny, and it's supposed to be funny for anybody who's trying to actually check the veracity of these statements. NASB, let's settle this disagreement out back like men. ESV, let's settle this out the back. Be a man. True. NIV, let's step outside and settle this like men or women. So NIV of them. KJV, this strife shall be quelled only through a struggle of men behind the dwelling. Yes. NKJV, this strife will be quelled only through a struggle of men behind the dwelling. I think I see the point they're trying to make there. NLT, you, me, outside now. And the message, cash me outside. How about that?
That's a throwback meme.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cash
it's
me
been around
outside,
for a
how about
while,
that?
but it appeared in my feed this week, and I thought, let's bring that back. So that's one. Neither of mine are actually videos. This next one is just a quote that I thought was incisive. I like to have a funny one and a serious one. This is by A.W. Tozer. He's got a couple of he's got some really, really incisive quotes that I've seen over the years, and this is one of them. We often treat Jesus the way Saul treated David. We want him to slay giants and sing evil spirits away, but we don't want him to be king. That's the appropriate answer. Like,
Yeah.
oof, yes. That was good. That was pause for some
Very cool.
reflection.
Very cool.
And this one was mine. I saw it today, and I was like, wow, that's actually really cool. There's some scientific validity to this Bible story.
Oh, is this Sunday cool?
Yeah. They have all the conspiracy
They've got some
theories,
crazy
like,
stuff. But anyway,
Yeah.
Stood still. All right, so in the book of Joshua in the Bible, the Israelites were fighting the Amorites, and it says in Joshua 10, verse 12 through 14, it says, Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ajalon. And it says, the sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day.
Amazing.
What's more amazing is when this happened, 1400 to 1500 BC, there's different records from around the world. The sun standing still in China and in Egypt, but in Mesoamerica, the Mayans and Aztecs, they talked about how the night never ended. So it was a full day of just night. I mean, they're all freaking out, so they decided to do all these mass sacrifices and stuff. Then in Egypt, this one was actually crazy. They said that the sun changed erratically in the sky, so it was setting in the west and then stopped and then started going backwards.
Wow, that'd be wild.
But the proof of the sun standing still in the Bible was accounted for by different cultures around the world.
Think about the record, though. The other religions and regions were thrust into confusion
by the narrative. The biblical account is the reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the middle of a conflict. So as far as like, if you were to argue which faith or which place was actually dialed into the causality of the event, our text gives that.
Yeah.
Unlike the rest.
The day the sun stood.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
That's really interesting. I mean, obviously, these are guys on the internet saying things.
Yeah.
But if those statements are true about the recordings in the other cultures, that is wild.
Yeah, it's
and
pretty
I
cool.
love it.
Yeah.
And it could always be like they found information, but it's the internet as well. But like that just blew my mind because surely stuff that's written in the Bible, if it's on a cosmic scale like that, there would be
Someone would notice.
Yeah, someone would notice.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Absolutely. I think that's fantastic. I would love to dig a little bit deeper into that.
This is another story that the flat earthers like to use.
Yeah.
The sun standing still. Because they go, well, if the sun stood still, according to globers, that would mean that the rotation of the earth actually just stopped. And that's not the sun standing still, that's the rotation of the earth stopping.
Oh, so therefore that's...
So therefore,
that's
it
not
must be a
adequate.
flat earth because the earth is flat and the sun's going around.
Yeah.
And it actually stopped. I'm like,
With
that's a
that-
pretty weak argument.
if you believe this happened because it's said in the Bible, then it's God who's moving the sun back. God can
God
rotate
can do anything.
the earth either the opposite way or keep it in a rhythm.
Yeah.
Like, that's so many of my arguments. Like, if you're saying if this happened, it would have to cause this, but you're bringing from a text that has an all-powerful God who created everything, don't you think he understands how everything works and makes it as smooth as possible so we don't fly off the edge of the earth?
Yeah. But that's the other story is the one is it Hezekiah and the sundial goes backwards?
Yeah.
And the thing I find interesting about this video is they're talking about the Joshua story, and then they mention that the Egyptians wrote down that the sun went backwards. And they're like, oh, it's interesting that they say it stood still, they say it stood still, but they say it went backwards. But it's actually a different event. Yeah.
That's a
Which
good point.
sort of gives a bit of validity to what they're saying, to be honest.
Yeah, that makes it more likely, not less
That's
likely.
right.
Yeah.
That these things were actually written down
There's
somewhere.
multiple-
But I have heard these elsewhere. But again, it's all people on the internet. You don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. But I believe it because the Bible says it happened, not because the Chinese say it happened.
Yep.
Yeah.
But if the Chinese also said it happened,
That's
Great.
Then I agree with the Chinese.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Love that. Cool. So in this section, we normally talk about like what's happening in the Table Tribe, you guys, and we have not had a lot of interactions with you over the last week, so I don't have a lot to share here. But what I do want to say is that the objective of what we're doing with this show, the whole thing, like everything for us is governed towards encouraging you who are out there and listening to do what we're doing. Right, to build these little communities of faith in your lounge room, around your dinner tables, whatever that might look like. And so if you are doing that, then we would love to hear from you guys. Take a selfie of your group, wherever that is, and send it to us because we would love to give you guys a shout out on the show. The other thing is that if you don't have a group like this and you would love for this to be a part of your life, do that. Reach out, call a friend and say, hey, we should do this kind of thing. We should get together more regularly. We should have these conversations. We should talk about the Bible, whatever that might look like. So if you haven't done it, do it. Tell us about it. We would love to hear about that. But yeah, ultimately, the whole purpose of our show is to encourage more of this to be happening. So just wanted to say that.
And I love that because, like, bringing up questions like what you have no answer for and it's giving you grief,
Yeah.
sort of thing, brain grief. Like,
Brain grief. Love that.
you bring it towards your friends and you have this discussion. Like, it took us like 30, 40 minutes to reach a conclusion when we thought we have no idea. We need to bring an expert.
We knew
on this.
we knew it was going to be a simple answer, and it was a simple answer. The answer was the guy who made that video was just lying
Yeah. He didn't
Or
do
very
enough.
or
uninformed.
very uninformed. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly right. Just before we transition into the actual topic, what have you done to your thumb?
I have a huge black blood blister.
I literally,
I-
while we were talking, I saw it and I almost like lost my words. Like I was just like, that looks so painful. I cannot focus on anything else apart from that right now.
Well, I am a panel beater,
Yes.
and I whack things with hammers all day. So naturally, you would think I would have a really good aim.
Yeah.
But even the best can slip up at times. And I whacked my thumb with a hammer. But I've also got, this one's harder to see, I've
can
got
see
a
that one
white
there.
blood blister right here.
Yeah.
So I got a white one and a black one.
Matching.
Yep. We got a little yin and yang action happening.
How long
Ebony and
ago did you
ivory.
do that?
That was Wednesday. No, that would have been Tuesday night. So I'm going to pop it tomorrow, but I was leaving it because I don't want to have an open wound at work.
Yep.
I'm going to pop it in the morning and I can.
While I was
bandage
looking at
up.
it, I'm literally thinking, how in the world did you have the self-control not to burst that before
It
now?
wasn't easy. Yeah.
Okay.
Just need to remember you're not the car.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes, don't hit yourself. Hit the, yeah. the
My thumb is
panels.
not a panel.
Yeah.
No, I actually didn't do this at work. I did it at home, but with a hammer, which I should have good aim. I don't.
Yeah, still.
The fact remains.
Yes. Okay, so topic for tonight. This is something that that you threw out there, Emerson. Did you want to throw the topic out for us?
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk about present truth that goes around. I feel like it was a bigger thing like 10 years ago. Everyone was
Yeah.
using the phrase present truth. But I think it is a interesting
Not present anymore.
sort of thing to talk about is like, well, throughout the Bible, you know, he was saying this to them and this to them and this to them. But that was a different time, a different culture, different people. Is it still relevant for us? And like, what can we get out of this idea of present truth? You know, why does God have, you know, raise up prophets throughout time instead of raising them all up and writing down what they did at once? If it's for all time,
Yeah.
then just do them all at once, right?
I think that's an interesting statement because in the actually, you know what? Before we go there, let's set ourselves up because a lot of our listeners may or may not be familiar with the concept of present truth. So I just turned up 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 12 is where we get this concept from. 2 Peter verse 12 says, "For this reason I will not be negligent," this is Peter writing, "I will not be negligent to remind you always of these things, though you know and are established in the present truth. Yes, I think it is right, as long as I am in this tent," he's referring to his body, "to stir you up by reminding you." So he's saying, it's my job to remind you of this present truth, the truth that is essential for you to know right now at this moment. And this is Peter speaking in his context, right? At that moment of history, this is what's important for you to know. So he's saying that, and he's telling them that he's reminding them now, and he's going to continue doing that as long as he is able to. The idea of present truth is the truth or the gospel through the lens of how it is relevant, what it looks like at the moment that you live in.
Yeah.
Because, you know, present truth for Noah was get on the ark, right? Get on the ark. I mean, we could use that metaphorically, but like it doesn't make sense to us anymore in the sense that it's not present truth. We don't need to get on
but
an
it doesn't
ark.
mean that it's not true anymore.
That's
Because
right.
it's still true that Noah needed to get on the ark.
But it's just not now.
It's just not.
It's
it.
not
That's
present
right.
anymore, right?
Yeah. And so so the idea of present truth is like, well, it's always, if something is true now, like I just clicked my fingers, it's true that I clicked my fingers, right?
Yep.
10 years from now, it's still going to be true that I clicked my fingers just then, right? But
I
I'm
won't
not clicking
remember.
my fingers. So it's like truth, when something is true, it's true forever. But it's not applicable ever again.
Yep.
You know, me clicking my fingers was only applicable because I was making a point about present truth.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about this also in relation to Revelation chapter 14,
Yeah.
because in that passage of the three angels message in particular, so Revelation 14 verse 6, I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven having the everlasting gospel, right?
Yes.
That is the part that is eternal. It's eternally relevant. It is present truth now. It was present truth then. It will be present truth next week and next year and 100 years from now, because it is what it is. But there are different expressions of that present truth, right? So, you know, get on the boat was Noah's expression of that same truth. You know, we could go all the way through history, right? But it's the question is, if we understand this concept of present truth, the question is, what is it now? Right. So, I think we'll get to that. But anyway, so that's
Well,
kind of I wanted to set that up. To
I'd like to throw back to our series that we did on strategies of God and the strategies
back
of
to
Satan.
things and remembering them.
Yeah, I think that. So to answer the question I sort of started off with, of like, well,
Why not just bring?
why not
everyone
just
back?
throw all of
Yeah.
the prophets in at once, and then that can be true forever, and everyone can have what they wrote down for the rest of Earth's history, and it's always going to be fine. Why is God bringing forth new teachers, new prophets, new patriarchs, new preachers, blah, blah, blah? And I think we need to say, well, truth is always true, but you got to actually think in the terms of present strategy. So what's God's present strategy? Because as we talked about during the series, God's strategies, which my favorite episodes we've ever made were from that series. So go back and listen to them because they're still true. Is God's strategies of how he's fighting Satan in the great controversy between him and Satan has changed throughout the history of Earth, right? He started off with this strategy, then he had that strategy, now he's working it this way, he's working at this new angle, So what's God's strategy that he's working at the moment? And that's what's relevant to us going forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Because it was the present truth for Noah was based on the strategy of God. We're going to flood the earth. That's the strategy of God, right?
Yep.
The present truth for John the Baptist was because
Get baptized, right?
Get baptized. Yeah. That was the message because he was preparing the way for the Messiah. Right? Well, Messiah's come and gone now.
Yeah.
But and that was God's strategy to send himself, So
I did have a thought when you was saying why wouldn't God just send them all at the same time so it all can be recorded. I think it was hard enough to listen to one prophet at a time. Like you see it all through the Bible. It's like they still didn't listen more than not.
Yeah.
And if God gave everyone, just say during the time of Noah, they'll be like, what's some guy doing baptizing people sort of thing there? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that comes back to what I'm saying about it's not applicable to the strategy that God's using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, because.
But I guess a better way is why not just send one prophet and he can write a whole bunch of stuff down, and then that can be the Bible for the rest of Earth's history. And everyone can look back at what he wrote to the people who he was around, and we can learn from him. Like, imagine it was like Haggai. Imagine that was the one prophet that God sent and said, okay, this is what you need to tell the people. And we can read Haggai and we can learn stuff from it, but it's not really that applicable to us, right?
I would say the key word here is the same reason that Jesus came to be with us, right? It's incarnational ministry. And I think it's the same with the prophets. Just because we hear the Bible tells us that the prophets spoke as they were moved, right? Like God didn't give them words and say, get your pen, write this word, then write this word, then write this word. God gave them visions, dreams, impressions, and then they went and wrote in their own words.
Yep.
There is no way that you could get somebody writing in their own words from 1,000 years ago and expect that it's going to be touching and moving and relevant to the people that are today. The underlying principles might be the same, but that's not the point. The point is that they are looking through a lens of the lived experience of that generation. And so that's what was necessary. So the Bible is relevant to us, absolutely. But when we read stuff in there, Abraham, right? Abraham, God's saying to Abraham, go and get these animals, cut them in half,
Yes.
put half of the animal on this side of the road and half of the animal on that side, and do that with all of them. And then, we read that and go,
This is nonsense.
What? Why? Why are you doing that to all those
messy.
animals?
Yeah.
Yeah, so messy. And then, and then all of a sudden, this flaming fire shows up and goes through the midst of the animals. And I'm like, this is crazy stuff.
And that's how
Right.
God was showing that he would keep his promise. But why? It doesn't make any sense to us because we're not from that time.
That's right, because that's not how we ratify covenants now.
That's
Now
right.
we do it by getting a fancy pen and a piece of paper and everyone signs it.
Yeah.
Back then, that was how they ratified a contract of agreement or the sale of land or
And
whatever
it makes
was.
no sense to us because it was like 5,000 years ago.
That's right. And so
Yeah.
it was written through that lens.
Yeah. And which is why it's really important to look up what was happening during that time period, because you could read that. And I know some people is like, oh, the Bible just gives you the information it needs. You
Yeah.
don't need to go to extracurricular stuff. Like, but it's good to learn what was happening, because then you go, oh, that's a covenant they're making.
Yeah.
It's not some weird sacrificial, like,
It's just,
could
just
even see
this
it as
odd thing. man.
maybe odd, even demonic if we're looking at it, like cutting up animals
Yep.
sort of thing, weirdly, and all of that. It's like, what is going on here?
Bloodletting. It's like, what is? Yeah.
Like, so.
Yeah.
so-
I've been thinking of like writing up a couple of things that I can put next to my bed that I can look at, and I can study the Bible, and I can look up at these things to remind me of how I should be studying the Bible. And one of those things that I'm thinking of writing is context, context, context.
Yeah.
Because it's, man, if you take things out of context, nothing in the Bible makes sense. Well,
Yeah.
not nothing, but like there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that if you take it out of context will just
Take you in a very
take
scary
you in
place.
a very scary place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
with if that's the way that we're looking at this, looking through those eyes, right? So even the
Well,
latest,
it's one of the ways.
it's one of the
one
ways,
of the
right?
ways, yeah.
But my point is, when we get to the end of the Bible, even the latest Bible writers are still coming to us from a couple of thousand years ago.
Mm.
And so when we read the Bible, we need to take, let's say, more care than a first century or second century reader would, because that's not the world that we lived in.
Mm.
So when we read now, what would you say? What is present truth for us? Like if you were to be the one that God is charging with identifying what present truth is for today, what does that mean, or what does it look like, or how would we even go about figuring that out?
I think the present truth for us right now is that the time of the end is upon us. Jesus is coming any day now. The prophecies have almost all been fulfilled. And really the only prophecies, literally the only prophecies that haven't been fulfilled yet are signs of the times. A couple of, not even, a lot of them have been fulfilled. But like a few of the signs of the times. And then
And when you say that, you're talking about Matthew chapter 24, when you see Jesus' discourse there. Yeah.
Matthew 24 and so on. And the second coming, and then everything after the second coming. That's the only stuff that hasn't happened yet. And so, and it's upon us. The prophetic timeline, what am I trying to say? Like the time prophecies have all been fulfilled.
Yeah.
So prophetic time is over. It ended in 1844. We're in the time of the end. I think that's our present truth. It's like prepare the way for the Lord, because he's coming back.
Yep. Yeah.
Basically coming back to Noah's, like, get ready for the time thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get on board.
Yeah, we should be able to definitely relate to Noah very well.
Yeah.
So you mentioned time prophecies, right? There are throughout the Bible, and this is one of the fascinating things that just really I get excited when I hear and I think about this. I've been studying the Bible with people who have not studied it previously, or at least not as much lately, right? And there's in a couple of different times, and this has just sort of woken up my own appreciation for it over again. Because when you see something enough times, it doesn't feel as special anymore, you know. And so, but having to go back through it with a beginner mindset, like for myself, and going like, how do I understand this? How do we know this is true? Those sort of questions has been really beautiful for me. And one of the things that I love about Scripture is that there are so many purposes that God had in mind when the Bible was written. There's the historic nature of it, where we can say this happened, then that happened, then that happened. So this is salvation history. But then there's poetry, there's art, right? Like there's the Psalms, and that communicates really. Like last week I was having a day, and it was a bad day, and I was looking for. I don't know what I was looking for, but I found myself in the Psalms, and I was reading where David is like in one of his more emotive phases, and he's just like laying it out before God and really having his say. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm feeling right now. Okay, King David, he was in my shoes, But then like literally the very next Psalm, he's like praising God again and like God's deliverance. I'm like, okay, that's a beautiful part of what the Bible is for. But then there is this category of book or of passage in the Bible, which is prophecy, and it is how we orient ourselves. And if we don't have that, if that's not in the Bible becomes a lot more like a very, very large fortune cookie where you can sort of read different things and get different things out of it. And yes, shows you how to live for sure, but you don't have a sense of place.
Mm.
Yeah.
And prophecy gives us that sense of place. And you can look, if you look back through all of the prophecy or major prophecies, time-based prophecies in the Bible, you can see over and over again that there's prophets that arise at the beginning and at the end of all of these time-based prophecies. Right from the flood, there's prophecies that relate to the ministry of John the Baptist, Jesus' ministry, and then the longest time frames, which is what you were referring to, finishing in 1844, is the 12,000. Sorry, well, brain just fogged on me right there.
12,600. 1260.
Yeah, 1260. I'm adding zeros here.
Yeah, my bad. I got it wrong as well.
The 1260-day prophecy, or the 23, which is a part of the larger 2300-day prophecy, right? And all of those prophetic lines converge in or around 1844. And we are now, and that just says that we're in the time of the end. Like, time prophecies are over. The clock has run out. We are now in the time of the end where we're literally just waiting for those last things to happen. And that is, from our perspective as people who live 70, 80 years, that's a long time ago. But when you compare that to the scale of Earth's history, it's a very small wedge of time that we occupy right now. Yeah. And I think that is present truth, right? The fact that, like you're saying, the fact that we are right here, I feel like I'm preaching, the fact that we are right here in time. And so our focus should be on, number one,
coming of Jesus.
Yeah, the second coming. And the truth that's related to that is the everlasting gospel, like we were looking at in the three angels' message.
Yeah. And the everlasting gospel is everlasting because the good news of how much God loves everyone will be forever. And his death for us humans, that does not stop being present truth when he comes back or when he recreates the world. No, that will be forever because forever the universe will know that God is love because of that one event. It's not until the earth ends. It's not just for humans. It's for everyone.
Yep.
Everlasting gospel.
It'd be kind of silly if we got to Jesus comes again, takes us home, and then it's just kind of like, oh, yep, everything in the Bible's like done now. Do your own thing. It's like, oh, but I thought you loved us.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. No, I was you were saying something at the beginning of that that made me think of this verse. I love Proverbs, and every now and then I read one that sticks with me, but I can never remember where it was. But it's Proverbs 4 verse 7 says, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom, and in all your getting get understanding." This is a better translation that I'll read. Hang on. That I have on my phone. It says, "The beginning of wisdom is this. The beginning of wisdom is this. Get wisdom. Though it cost all you have, get understanding." So he's saying, like, it doesn't, like, I don't care what it costs you. You need to study and figure this out. Like, study it, figure it out, get understanding. If it costs you everything, it's worth it. Understanding it is worth it, right? And it reminds me of the verse 18, Revelation 13, verse 18. It says, "Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the famous 666 verse, right?" Mm-hmm. But the first half of that verse has a really good lesson in it. And the lesson is that people need people like us who we love the Bible, we study the Bible, we gain a rich understanding of the Bible. And like you were talking about, you're doing Bible studies with complete noobs, right? Which is awesome. And they're probably the funnest people to study the Bible with because you can just blow their mind along the way. But it's like, man, how do I explain this to them because it's so complicated? And then you start thinking, how do I even understand this? Like I think about that like every now and then when like a friend from work will ask me a question and I'll be like, well, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I go, man, I feel like I don't study the Bible enough, but like, how do I understand all of it? Because it's so complicated.
Yeah.
And I just love this verse. Let him who has understanding calculate. Just those words, you know, like, yeah. I think it's good for people like us to encourage us, like, yeah, what we're doing is a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because King Solomon wrote Proverbs, or it's suspected he did. And then he wrote Ecclesiastic too. And like, I've looked up both of them where he weighs up like knowledge and wisdom. It takes so much of your time. It's almost vanity. It's almost like not worth it. But once you have it, it's so worth it sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like there's that.
Like getting a good understanding of the Bible, like there's so much that we don't understand. Like, I'm not saying that we understand the Bible and we're the pinnacle. Not at all. We've got a lot to figure out. And like, I believe that we will study the Bible till the last day of our life, you know, and we'll still be learning stuff that's blowing our minds.
The thing that's lacking is our mining of it, not its volume of value.
Exactly.
Right?
We're never going to reach the bottom of the mine, but we need to try.
I get frustrated sometimes when I'm reading scripture and I realize that I'm like, I feel like I've been right through the Bible a number of times, but I've been right through and I have scraped up all of the gems that are on the surface, and that was an amazing experience. But now every time I go and I read something, I'm like, I've read this before. I know there's stuff in there that I don't know yet, but because I have to dig now, because I've already scraped all the stuff off the surface, but I haven't even started the mining in most places.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a crazy thing to think about,
Yeah.
the volume of what's still there.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again, but if you're reading the Bible, you're doing it wrong. The Bible's not meant to be read.
Yeah.
It's meant to be studied.
Yep.
If you read the Bible, a lot of stuff's going to confuse you, and you'll get those gems from the top. But you need to dig. You need to mine.
Yep.
The Bible's meant to be studied.
The other time.
And if you don't understand it, find someone who does. Because as the Bible's saying, that there's people out there who have wisdom and have understanding, and they're the ones who are supposed to be calculating what the 666 means. Yeah. If you're not the man who has wisdom and understanding, then you're not ready. You know,
Keep looking.
Keep looking. You know, you can get there.
What were you going to say, Shannon?
Yeah, it's like the last time where I had the question, I think it was right at the end, where it's like, what does the 7 eyes and of the lamb and all of this, and then we went through it a little bit, and it's like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
And it's just, it's like something that confuses you. Ask someone who you know, like, hey, I know they've studied the Bible, like,
but it's interesting because I see when people start asking those really complicated questions, you know that they have a good understanding of the Bible. Because if they had a shallow understanding of the Bible, they wouldn't be asking a question that complex. You know, they'd be asking like, oh yeah, like, why did Jesus raise Lazarus if he knew that the people were going to kill him? You know, like, it's just basic questions, you know. But yeah, to see you ask that question, you go, oh, what's with the 7 eyes and the lamb? And like, that's a really complicated question. And something that I was like, I don't know, man. Like, that's a really good question. Like, yeah. It's cool.
So, question around the idea of present truth.
Yep. Back on track.
If we're saying that present truth is that Jesus is returning, that we are called to be ready for that, and we are called to call others to be ready for that, come out of Babylon, those sort of things. If that's what we're establishing that present truth is, how do we avoid present truth burnout? Because that's been present truth for our whole lives and our parents' whole lives.
The everlasting gospel.
Yeah, it is the everlasting gospel.
Yep.
Do you ever feel like you are at risk of burnout, or like, ugh, really, this again?
I've never burnt out on the everlasting gospel, but,
no, but
I've burnt out on prophecy. I've burnt out on second coming. I've burnt out on 3 angels' message. But you got to bring it back. You got to bring it back to the everlasting gospel. Jesus on the cross. That's the most important thing. And when you go back to that, it refreshes you. Well, I'm sorry. I'm talking from my experience.
See, what I was thinking, and I've been thinking kind of like in how to put this for a while, like in this study, is maybe call it something like adaptive present truth. Just hear me out.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
I'm liking
So,
this.
You have the present truth that is Jesus coming again, and the everlasting gospel is important. What we need to get out. We read through like Old Testament stuff that seems like Noah has no place in this, but then if you adapt it to go, what's the connection to the everlasting gospel? The connection to the present truth. It might not work everywhere in my brain because I'm still kind of mulling it over and all that. But if you adapt it to the present truth, it links to it. But if you're trying to adapt stuff to other parts of the Bible that isn't really connecting it to the present truth or the everlasting gospel, I think that's where it can kind of like get loose ends and you go down these deep rabbit holes that might not necessarily be worth it.
Yeah.
It could be fun, but like...
Yeah, but there's a lot of topics that fit that category, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's like, oh, it's so much fun to talk about or think about, but like we can't know or it's not.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Yeah, right.
All right, let me give you something to see if I'm understanding what you're saying on this adaptive present truth. Right. So, Luke chapter 17, verses 28. 26.
Luke 17:26.
Hang on. Let me check again.
So it wasn't the days of Noah, is that what you're looking for?
28.
28.
Okay. Luke 17:28. Likewise, as it was in the days of Lot. Right? We always talk about the verse days of Noah, but he also mentions the days of Lot. They ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and demolished them all. All right. What's the present truth here? Because he's talking about something that happened ages ago. Present truth is
As it was.
as it was in the days of Lot, right? Now,
Time to go.
it's time to go, right? But also, fire and brimstone is coming, right? Same message. And he talks about, as it was in the days of Noah, in verse 26, as it was in the days of Noah, they ate, they drank, flood destroyed them, right? And then, so the issue of, as it was in the days of Noah, what was the major issue with the people before the flood was their thoughts of their head were only evil continually, right? What was the problem? What was the sin in the days of Lot?
Same thing.
It was the same thing, but
Yeah.
more specifically, it was homosexuality was running rampant, LGBT now running rampant, right?
And violence.
And violence and rape gangs. You know, did you see that rape gang news in England?
Crazy
Oh my goodness. They just uncovered this. There's been a Pakistani rape gang running rife in England for like 20 years. And they've hundreds of thousands of girls, like children, have gone through this, right? And they've just uncovered it, and the government's trying to hide it, right? And it's just horrible, right? And in the days of Lot, what happened when the angels went to save Lot? Right? The men of the city tried to rape them.
Yep.
Right? So we're like, okay, present truth. This homosexuality, rape, it's all bad, and fire and brimstone's coming. Right? That's not present truth. That was old truth.
Yep.
But it's also present truth because it's the same
The
message
context.
for today.
Adaptive
present truth. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly what I had on my mind. All the lessons, all these stories, they're important and they're in here for a reason because you have other books like that talk of the book of the prophet of whoever. Like I think Gideon, there's a prophet of Gad.
That's right.
And there's a book named. We don't have that today.
Yeah.
It wasn't important enough for all present truth.
Yeah.
Non-canonical
Non-canonical
Yep.
prophets.
Nathan, Gad.
Yeah. So there's a reason why the Holy Spirit has guided, like it says in 2 Timothy 3:16, all scripture is given by God for reproof, like understanding. Like it has to be adaptive truth. And I love those verses. And like the next verse in it, and thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Like, that's talking about Jesus coming back, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to double check. But yeah. And you see, like, Jesus is being revealed. Muslim countries, Israel. There are so many people coming to Christ and understanding Jesus was the Messiah. They missed it, but they're here now.
Yeah. Better late than never.
Better late than never. And it's like Jesus is being revealed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting, man.
That is cool.
It's great.
I love this. I love the idea. So I'm just going back and I'm like applying this idea of adaptive present truth. So I think is what we're saying that adaptive present truth or present truth is taking the everlasting gospel or the principles that are eternal, but we're applying it in the context in which we live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Right. Cool.
But first, as we've said before, you have to understand what the context was.
Yep. Context,
to be
context,
able to
context.
To be able to faithfully apply it here.
faithfully applied here, because so many times you see people try applying from there to there, but they're taking a few verses, a chapter or something, going, hey, this is like this and nowadays. But if you look at the actual context, it's like,
It's not quite.
that's not quite right. There's
Yeah.
so much you're missing and getting like wrong
Yep.
or something like that. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think that also on present truth, there's cultural truth. Because
Interesting.
if you read the letters of Paul to the churches, he speaks to them each differently because they're each different cultures, right? But at the same time, it's all present, right? But it's still different. Like the way he writes to the Romans compared to the way he writes to the Galatians, completely different.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're completely different societies. So there's that's where context comes in.
See, that's very adaptive present truth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. I like this lens through which to look at it because
Then
I think this is why, because if we go back to like Martin Luther, right? Let's think Reformation. In the Reformation, Martin Luther's message was righteousness by faith. We missed it. Like, this is actually the point.
Yep.
Right. I think that is still present truth. But it's in a very different scenario now. We package it completely differently because now we're in a time where most people are not saying, no, you have to work for your salvation. Most people are saying there is no salvation. You do you. Like live however you want to live. Like
saved, always saved.
Once saved, always saved. So there's no problem. Why are we even having this conversation?
Yep.
And so we're expressing the same truth, and that is that the gospel is a free gift, but we're having to express it to a bunch of people who don't even believe that God is real, or if they do believe that He's real, they have a different idea of who He is, or whatever that might be. So the conversations we have look very different. I say this because when I preach, I have typically not every time, but typically I've preached in more conservative congregations. When I preach in a more conservative congregation, I preach grace really hard because like I just feel that that's what God leads me towards doing. Like I feel like that's the problem that those people are wrestling with, and so they need to see the beauty of God's grace. When I speak in congregations that are more progressive in how they approach Scripture, I feel much more compelled to share the beauty of God's law and how He is using that as a mode of love towards us. Because I feel like that's God leading me to share the truth in a way that is going to bend them towards God's plan for them. That doesn't say that I am the arbiter of truth, but that's saying when I believe when the Holy Spirit is using me, God gives me those impressions to shape it in ways that are going to be for the congregation.
Cultural
that's turning
truth.
it into present truth. Sorry.
Cultural
truth.
truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. I love that. That's really a good point.
Cool. So is there anything else specific that you guys would like to delve into around this question of present truth? Or are we feeling like we've kind of hit what we want to hit for this time round?
Yeah. I've hit like anything that's come up that's sort of stuck around or come back up, I've said.
Yeah.
Like there's a bit about other prophets that aren't currently in truth or like not in the Bible.
Yeah.
They're not true anymore.
We're revoking the truth code.
Yeah. But it would be really cool if we could look at those records once we get to heaven. Like, oh, what did it actually say?
Yeah, I think we will be able to. I sometimes wonder if the reason that they're lost is because God knew they would take us in a wrong direction.
Yeah.
Like, not that they were wrong for then, but like, you know, like there's the, we were talking before when we were talking about the flat earth thing. And I said, we should bring this up on the show and ask anybody if they know what's going on. And Emerson, you said like, no, I don't want to create any more flat earthers than there already are. You know? Like that. It's not that what you were asking was bad. It's that you don't want to be misleading people by a question, right?
Because I was still almost certain that there was something that I was missing.
Yes,
and if I didn't have an answer for it, and they didn't have an answer for it, then they might be just as perplexed as I am and might become a flat earther.
Yeah, or their brain just...
That's all I meant by it. Yeah.
Anyway, so I think what we're encouraging anybody that's listening to do or to think is to, when you read scripture, don't read it from the perspective of this is something that happened a long time ago. Don't automatically assume that everything written in there is for you.
Yeah, that's right.
You want to read it and you want to wrestle with it. Not actually, as a matter of fact, not read it, study it, like you were saying, right? Study it and see how it relates to us now. What is the present truth, variety of that everlasting gospel for you? Right?
Yeah.
And of course, for us, every truth that we read, every single part of it comes packaged in the idea of being right at the end of time, right before the second coming of Jesus. That informs every other piece of truth that we plug into it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then something else is like, if you study it like that, where you're wanting to adapt, like have it as adaptive present truth, and you read things, like a lot of people don't like genealogies.
Yep.
But they're in there for a reason. Or other parts of the Bible where they might think, oh, this story is kind of long, drawn out, or something like that. It doesn't It doesn't pique my interest.
Yep.
But then if you go, hey, let's dig deep into it. Let's find the adaptive present truth.
Yeah.
And then how can it relate to nowadays, sort of thing? Then it becomes a lot more interesting. Then it's like, ooh, there's actually like this in here, and then you can get excited about it.
Yep. Sometimes I think, like you were talking about, like the books of the prophet Nathan and the prophet Gad, and we'll leave them out. Sometimes I think, well, there's a couple of these other ones you probably could have left out, like you read through some of the minor prophets, and I go, man, we don't need this.
Yep. Yeah. I'm depressed enough.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, anyway, we might leave that there. Thank you guys for joining us for another episode. It's been a fun one. I really appreciated this this study.
It's good.
We will see you guys next time.
Next week. What are we talking about next week?
Next week we are talking about. We actually decided.
We actually have one.
I don't know how long since this has happened, right? Yeah. But next week we're talking about the Pharisees.
Yeah, that's right.
The Pharisees.
Are they?
Pharisees. What was the title?
So I'm thinking the title should be The Pharisees, Villains or Just Idiots?
Yeah. Okay. So if you have any ideas on that, please message us on social media. Drop it in the comments here on YouTube, or you can get on our Discord server. All of the links to everything we do, by the way, are on our website. So if you want to check that out, that's AusTableTalk.com.au. Oz as in Australia, AUS, tabletalk.com.au. And we will see you guys next week for finding out finally if the Pharisees are idiots or villains.
Very clickable.